Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy, with a first spread. I've used these cards before, at least I think I have. Anyway, with my deck of the month. So the Tarot of the Cat People is my deck of the month, and so this is the first spread that I'm doing with it as such. And it is a little bit difficult because for some reason it just seems very people-y, and there's people in. So let's see here. Normally there would not be a person in the Ace of Pentacles or the Eight of Wands, but otherwise there would be. But in this deck in general, there's less background. So I think it is going to be a little bit challenging to read, but not entirely. So I'm just thinking, what do I do first? First, I'll say this. I think I mentioned when I did the intro video for this that I was like assigning a power to each card. And I completed that process. And I need to mention it because I'm going to talk about the powers that are present here. So I have all of these. So, for example, the High Priestess here is the power of insight. The Wheel of Fortune is the power of resources. The Tower, how many majors do I have here? 4. 4 out of 9. The Tower is the power, I think, of disruption. Yes, the power of disruption. The Hermit is the power of solitude. So I did that for all of the, and it didn't take too awfully long. Some of them were a little perplexing. I need to go back through some of, I think I had a couple of competing ones that were the same. I did go back over the swords and made it the Courage 2. I did the Courage 2, like, the courage to make a choice. And I need to look back at that. To see if they're very different from the power, the power of, as opposed to the Courage 2. And the Pentacles, I was using the phrase the value of or the need for. So it was an interesting exercise. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about these, which I wrote on a 3x5 card. So the power of insight. And this one is either the power of complexity with the level of juggling that's going on there, or the power of letting go. Because he couldn't keep all of those 8 wands there if he weren't letting some of them go. So he's managing them, but he's managing 8 while only having 2 in his hands at any given time. Because this looks like a mirror, like she's holding a mirror, the Ace of Pentacles, I would call like, I called it the power of self-regard. You can think of it in others, the value of self-worth, with the word worth in there for Pentacles is appropriate. But it wasn't exactly what came to mind. The Ten of Cups here is, to me, it's like the power of coziness. But I called it the power of popularity. It's like he's very popular, and so the cats are wanting to completely monopolize every inch of him. um, could be the power of body heat. Let's face it, that's what they're after. The Hermit is the power of solitude. The Two of Wands is the power of understanding both sides of an issue, so seeing both sides. The Tower is the power of disruption, or the power of the unexpected. Again, the Wheel of Fortune is the power of resources, because if you have resources, you can make things happen, or you have more control over that wheel. And the power of music. Or I also thought it could be the power of kind of being in tune with others. So while that's interesting, all of those things, I don't know if they're going to be terribly useful. So I think they're interesting points of reflection. For instance, I could go through this and I could look at each one of them, like the High Priestess, and ask myself, how am I using the power of insight, or how could I use the power? I think it's am, because usually when I'm doing a 9-card spread like this, and I didn't have anything specific in mind when I was doing it, so to me this is a kind of a snapshot of my present situation, or that's what I would expect to come. There might be some messages about what's to come, or what's important, what I need to consider in terms of moving forward or anything like that, but it's intended to, again, kind of be a snapshot of the present. I should be able to recognize myself and my situation. So we know the High Priestess is about doing readings, and here I am doing readings, and I expect to do more today that I will upload for the future. So that's in the way that we would normally interpret the High Priestess, that it works for what I'm doing today is a snapshot of my life. The Eight of Wands, maybe a little less so. So the power of letting go. So if I were to think, the power of insight, I'm doing the card readings, as well as reflecting on this particular group of cards. So that's what I would do, is I would go through each one, and I would ask myself, to what extent that power is evident in my life, or if I need to develop it. I probably need to develop the Eight of Wands. I would say that. Maybe I need that power, but I'm not very good at it. The Ace of Pentacles, yes, I need to, like I recently did a spread that I shared on here that was about my sensitivities, and to be aware of them, that sort of thing. I'm not expecting any popularity. May there not be an excess of kitties suddenly in my life. I don't need that. None of us, no living thing in my house needs that. Any additional living things in my house. This could be telling me to, appreciate my pets more. To spend some cozy time with them. The Hermit, I live in solitude. That there's no evidence that that is going to change anytime soon. I'm not sure what issue I need to see both sides of. But maybe that will become evident at a later moment, as tarot cards so often do. The Tower, the power of disruption. It's interesting because I use that quite a bit. You know, dog trainers in general, we call it redirecting. The tower is a little more forceful than most redirecting that goes on in dog training, but and usually that redirection is auditory, or frequently it's auditory or some motion or something. So yeah, I do feel a little leery of what the tower might be bringing my way, or indicating in terms of disruption. Resources, I think this is, you know, the power of resources is asking me to think about what resources I have and how I can use them. And the power of music can just be referring to music for rest and relaxation. Being in tune could be being in tune with the wants and needs of others, particularly for business purposes. But I think in the best of all possible worlds, if I'm going to be using this power of, courage of, or courage to, or value of, if I'm going to use that construct that I just wrote down, that it would be more appropriate to pull like one card, just one card, and like think about exercising that power for a day, making it kind of the primary thing that I focus on for the day, as opposed to applying it to 9 cards that are laying out here. It's just too much. It is too much. I mean, I could spend an entire 12 hours like ruminating on like how each of these powers is in my life. You know, I could take this 9 card spread and just be in a state of rumination for the rest of the day. But that isn't really why I pulled it. It's like, is it a reflection of my life? So High Priestess, yes. Solitude, yes. Music, yes. I've recently kind of gone back and listened to some music when after a long period where I wasn't listening very much to music. So, yes. I'm not doing too much multitasking. The 10 of Cups, not as this is portrayed, but the 10 of Cups was in my pull for this past week, and it ended up showing up as problems with my kitchen sink leaking all over the floor, so that the pipes were loose underneath, and I ended up with water all over the floor, first a little bit and then a lot. And so I've had a lot of I've seen a lot of my plumber and handyman. So yes, I'm having a hard time with the 8 of Wands. If I'm just looking at this card, if I take the 8 of Wands like as a bunch of messages coming in, kind of yes and no, not an overwhelming amount. And I don't have a lot of things up in the air, so to speak, as you know, this person has their hands on 2 things, just like this, but is having to keep moving fast and keeping things up in the air. I mean, it could indicate like having to move stuff out from under my kitchen sink, and having to do my dishes in the, you know, the more bedroom bathroom area. So, you know, that there is an aspect of juggling there. So there was an aspect of juggling to the week in that regard. Self-worth, or self-regard. Well, I have been kind of aware of sticking to my needs and how I need to advocate for myself, and also thinking about, what isn't what I have, maybe what I have slash who I am. And I mean, I can value those things, but in many ways, it's like I wouldn't um, be who I am if I didn't value who I am. I would attempt to adjust certain things about myself, and of course I do. That's always an ongoing process. But trying, so that might be this Two of Wands in terms of seeing things from two perspectives is, there's always what I like about myself, but what I like about myself isn't always what the public, they might not even see what it is that I like about myself. So trying to see things from two different lights, holding a light for myself and then holding a light for other people. And this has to do with like my current channel, I have another channel. I'm thinking of starting a couple of other ones, not all to do with tarot. But I feel like I need to be fairly honest with myself regarding what I can even take on, for one thing, and what I would value and get emotional value out of, and what the world would value, and thus meet me halfway by coming to the channel. So those things have been on my mind. So but I'm not aware of a tower. There have been no tower moments that, well, like I said, I had the flooding. I suppose that is a tower moment. It did, it didn't require any jumping ship, but it did require a lot of rearranging. And all got taken care of over a series of visits by the handyman. So the resources thing is kind of in alignment with these, having to do with, really, it should be reversed. It should be reversed. It isn't the power of having resources, it's more the ingenuity required when you don't have resources. And the thinking, in terms of just deciding whether something is worth your time and whether it would ever generate an income, or whether it's something that should just be done for emotional value and that kind of thing. And the in-tuneness could also, to some extent, trying to be in tune with what others might value. Just trying to look, this seems to be kind of harmonious in that way. I suppose this hermit could be seen as taking inventory. It looks pretty blank in there. Taking inventory of my resources. But I'm happy to say, because this is so animal focused, is a Ten of Cups. Like I said, the Ten of Cups this week did indicate, I think, the flooding in my kitchen. And so, the flooding is what I said is related to the tower, the shock, the unexpected. Where did all that water come from? Standing right there, I didn't hear any of it leaking out. And then I turn around and there's water all over the place. So that's how I've messed with these cards, but I don't feel like it was when I'll say this, when I looked at the set of cards, I didn't have any except, you know, the Hermit. That makes sense, and this makes sense. There was nothing else. There was nowhere else in the spread, I guess, where I could really see myself. I wasn't seeing myself in here. So time will tell whether that proves to be a problem or if this will be a one pull deck. Like I said, pull one card and then, you know, almost use it more like an oracle deck. And then as a prompt to think about my powers or my courage or what I'm valuing at the moment, that sort of thing, which is fine. I have no problem if that's going to be its role. But it could also just be that this is a deck where, you know, to me 9-card readings they're intuitive readings. And so it could be that this deck works much better when there are assigned positions for each of the cards, you know, an assigned question for each card. I could also see using it potentially for you know, in the past, I've done this thing where the deck creates the spread, where you pick a card, and the card is supposed to be your prompt to create a question. So this might be the question. In my case, because I, you know, am doing the card reading, you know, well, I would say this. What is the condition of my intuition right now? This would be like, how am I being overwhelmed? How am I managing multitasking? And maybe this would be, how do I see myself right now? Or even what could I do to better nurture myself? Since this is the Ace of Pentacles, it doesn't have to strictly be physical, but you know, I think that self-regard, self-respect, self-worth with an Ace of Pentacles does have some root in the physical. You know, and because I do have the Lyme disease and that gives me limitations, I could even ask myself, how is my self-worth being impacted by my limitations? So I could have just done, you know, I could do something like that with the cards once a week or once in a blue moon. Just pull them and use them to create questions so they create the spread, and then either pull additional cards to answer that spread or pull from a completely different deck, an easier reader than this one for the answers. So that's where we are to start, and probably the next thing that I will do with this deck will be to do that Chinese system, that 5-card Chinese system of elements that I do, which does have assigned positions in the spread. And so we'll see how it does with that. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.